Okay, so we are at the final section of the Kumarajiva's treatise, and it is dealing with the supernatural powers. The supernatural powers are, of course, very important for those practicing the path of the bodhisattva. It is emphasized, like in Yogacara Bhumi Shastra, among the bodhisattva gunas, the qualities of the bodhisattvas to be cultivated. The first one is called Achinta Prabhavata, the unthinkable powers. If we want to become the fully realized Buddhas, which is the motivation of cultivating the bodhisattva path, then these supernatural powers, or what is called supernatural powers, they are actually not supernatural, they are natural. They are natural when one has cultivated them, but they are supernatural if one has not cultivated them. So these supernatural powers, they give the power into the mind. We have explained this principle on the basis of explaining the jhanas, the dhyanas. The dhyanas, Buddha compares in Jhana Samyutta to swimming across the river. If we can't swim across the river, we can't get to the other shore. And he compares the other shore to liberation and swimming to the jhanas. We have also explained that the jhanas are, the 8 samapatis are in Abhidharma, the northern and southern of the disciples, the base for the Samadhi study. The Samma Samadhi, the correct Samadhi of the Eightfold Noble Path, is explained indeed in Abhidharma as 8 Samapatis. And we know that the Samma Samadhi is the last part of the Eightfold Noble Path, leading to the mastery of the middle path, and middle path in Buddhism is the only way to liberation. It emphasizes there is actually no other way. So, in order to cultivate the supernatural powers, the Yogacara Bhumi Shastra also explains that we definitely need to cultivate the great compassion. Actually, all Buddhas, including the Shravaka Buddhas, the disciple Buddhas, they have compassion. Without compassion, there cannot be liberation. It is a misunderstanding that the Arahats have no compassion. Arahats definitely have metta, karuna, but they don't have, so at least the Mahayana scriptures emphasize, they don't have the Mahakaruna, the great compassion. The great compassion belongs also to the 10 powers of the Tathagata. We don't speak now in detail about all these powers of the Tathagatas, but the first, actually the last, as far as I remember, the last among the 10 powers, the Dasha Balas of the Tathagata, is the Mahakaruna. So it is in a way the privilege of the Tathagata. And when you read the Mahayana scriptures like the Mahayana Nirvana Sutra, so you will find that actually the Maha Maitri and Maha Karuna, the great friendliness and the great compassion, is the content of the Buddha's supreme realization. You will find a similar idea in even in the Theravada depiction of the paramis, of the perfections, where not karuna but maitri and upeksha come as among the 10 paramis, and namely they are the last paramis. That means the perfect Buddha, he attains a perfect friendliness, and friendliness and compassion, as Nagarjuna and others have always emphasized, especially Vimalakirti, the great friendliness, great love, and great compassion actually cannot be strictly separated. One flows freely into the other. So now we come to the what Kumarajiva translates as the psychic powers of transformation. So these psychic powers of transformation, in Chinese, Pianhua Shentung. Pianhua Shentung, actually, strictly speaking, also translate one of these riddhis or idhis, or supernatural powers. They are actually in the Theravada tradition based on the Patisambhidhamagga. They are 10 idhis. When you read some Mahayana scriptures like Ratnakuta Sutra, so you will find 3 or 4 among them. In this scripture also they are mentioned 4, if I'm right. So actually in the Theravada tradition you can have 10 of them. And they are, according to the analysis of you will find in Visuddhimagga, in the path of purification, the idhi is derived from ijati. Pali root ijati means to succeed. So strictly speaking, when you succeed in anything related to the Dharma practice, you are having idhi, you are having a success. But Kumarajiva translates as success in psychic transformation. Pianhua. Pianhua means transformation. So it means actually the literal translation of the Sanskrit vikurbana or vikubana Pali. This vikubana means that you can change on the base of the power of your mind. You can change any materia according to your idea, inner and outer. And this is also more or less the content of the idhis, description of idhis here. But in the Pali tradition, to explain briefly, explained in detail in Patisambhidhamagga, in Visuddhimagga, which is based on Patisambhidhamagga. So you have 10 idhis, starting with Adhithana idhi. Adhithana means determination. So when you want to become, when you want to have a powerful mind, you have to practice. We will have this content in our description. Kumarajiva specially emphasizes Adhithana idhi in explanation of the supernatural powers. By determination, you can decide whatever you want. You want to fly, by determination, you can learn to fly. You want to walk on earth by determination, you can walk on earth if you know the proper technique on the base of the earth kasina and so on. We will talk about it later. So our content of description of the idis is based on the adhitthana idi. The practice of adhitthana idi is, as the scripture itself has described, and last lecture we have explained, the idipadas. Because we practice idipadas, the basis for supernatural powers, we can attain these supernatural powers. When we practice enthusiasm, when we practice continuous practice, vyayama, when we practice pure mind, chitta, when we practice analytical wisdom, mimamsa, for the sake of concentration, we can get a continuity in the one-pointedness of mind. And these idis, they are based on the continuity in the one-pointedness of mind. You use this continuity in one-pointedness of the mind in order to achieve just about anything. On the base of, when you study especially the Yogacara literature, which is a base for Tantric tradition also, on the base of the creating mental images, the Pure Land also is kind of a mental image into which you turn your determination. By creating these mental images with the one-pointedness of mind, you can do practically anything. And we have explained, at least in the Theravada tradition, this firmness in the mental images is based on the continuous practice of the kasinas, of the pienchu, the totalities. Then the next idi mentioned in the Patisambhida Magga is the Vikubana idi. This is precisely what explains this psychic transformation. Vikubana, Vikurbana. So by the Vikubana idi, you can change your body into about anything. Just like Devadatta, by the power of his Vikurbana idi, he was able to impress the king Ajatashatru, appearing in him in front of him in the shape of a boy, teaching him what should be done and what should not be done, which impressed him so much that he became his disciple. And this is precisely what he wanted to achieve by showing his supernatural powers. So, as we have explained, the supernatural powers, if you have a powerful mind, you can do powerful good and you can do also powerful evil. So, to do powerful good is the practice of the bodhisattva. But a powerful mind can also do a powerful evil. And this is the problem with the idis. This is how we explain here and in the tradition. They come after the practice of the vipassana. If you have not penetrated vipassana wisdom, then you can still misuse the supernatural powers for doing powerful evil instead of powerful good. That's why in our explanation of Kumarajiva, they come after the explanation of the Four Noble Truths. We have explained that. Then you have very important idhi we have mentioned before, Manomaya idhi. That means you can separate the mental body from the physical. In description of the Patisambhida Magga, Visuddhimagga, like taking a sword out of a scabbard, you can draw out your mind from the physical body. And this, in Indian tradition, not only the Buddhists could do it, also very famous stories of the Hindu saints, among others, this Shankaracharya, for example, very famous in being able to master this drawing out the mind from the body and landing in another body which was dying, to become a king, enjoying all kinds of pleasures. So these stories are very common in Indian literature, and this is based on Manomaya Iddhi. You cannot practice Manomaya Iddhi until you have mastered completely dhyana, so that like a Buddha you can draw away completely the five senses from the outer objects. This is a mastery of the dhyana, which we normal practitioners can never achieve in 1 life, 2 lives, 3 lives. One has to practice, as the Buddhist literature emphasizes, for many, many innumerable lives to be able to do such feasts like the teachers of the Buddha and the Buddha himself, to draw the 5 senses completely from the outer objects into the mind, to the extent of not hearing anything and not feeling anything with the body. So this is mastery of the Manomaya Iddhi. And now comes the Iddhis which are not at all mentioned in the Mahayana literature. The first one is Jnana Vifara Iddhi. That means you can, this is very important, and it is also considered Iddhi in the Pali literature. You can consider the anicca as nicca, and so on. You can at any time you can go into the Nirodha Samapatti, so as to draw away completely from the impermanence, so that the outer and the inner become one object, namely Nirvana. And that is a Jnana Vifara Iddhi. Only those who have mastered completely the dhyanas can do that. Then you have Samadhi Vifarana. So any type of Samadhi is also Iddhi, because in order to get into the first dhyana, you have to separate from the 5 obstacles, and that is also Iddhi, at least as explained in the Pali literature. Then you have the Arya Iddhi. That means you can experience the unpleasant object as a pleasant, and the pleasant object as an unpleasant object. Then you have Kama Vipaka Ja Iddhi. That means some are, so to say, they are born with these supernatural abilities. They don't need to cultivate them. They are born with them. They are also examples like that in Buddhist literature, especially in the Tantric literature. Some persons, yogis, they are born with these supernatural powers. They don't need to cultivate them. Then you have the Panyavato Iddhi. You are born due to your merit. You are born as a universal monarch, as a Chakravati. Then you have Vijamaya Idhi, like a magician, as explained in Lankavatara Sutra and so on. You can produce any object on the base of the magic. So then you have Samapayoga Idhi, which is actually based for, in a way, from all the correct idhis. That means by proper training, you get the proper results. Now, this it is explained, I think, in Yogacara Bhumi Shastra. These idhis you can get by training, by prayoga. You can get them by drugs. You can get them by mantra. And I forgot the fourth one. There are 4 of them, by mantra. And you can get them by probably by cultivation. Anyway, so different ways, even drugs, mantras, they can lead to these supernatural powers. Now, what our text emphasizes are the supernatural powers which lead to ability to teach Dharma and to penetrate Dharma. So, in the Buddhist literature, you will find also that Buddha, he has 3 kinds of patiharya. I think I have mentioned this before. He has a Iddhi patiharya. He has the miraculous supernatural powers like the Yamaka patiharya. But important is he has Desana patiharya and Anushasana patiharya. He is able to teach Dharma according to the minds of the beings, according to their indriyas, their faculties, which he can penetrate. And also he can teach in any sphere of existence. He can teach the beings in hell, he can teach the beings in heaven, he can teach the beings in any conditioning at all, and in any sphere of existence, and in any world, in any system of the world. This is a privilege of the Buddha. And the bodhisattva, indeed, especially if you read the scriptures like Avatamsaka Sutra, Gandavyuha, Huayan Jing, you will find that this is a main training of the bodhisattva, to be able to receive and teach Dharma in any state of existence. This is the only way to attain this Samantabhadra practice, the practice of universal mind, practice of the universal bodhisattva or universal Buddha. So this we have explained. The explanation of the 4 Noble Truths is precisely on the understanding of the disciples. Explanation of the supernatural powers which we are dealing with now in our treatise is completely based on the understanding of the bodhisattva practice, from the point of view of the motivation to attain the supreme Buddhahood. Now, we have to remember the Kumarajiva is the translator, among others, of the Lotus Sutra. And the Lotus Sutra emphasizes that finally, and we will find this same idea in our scriptures, that actually there is only one Buddhahood. There are the 3 kinds of Buddha is only skillful means to attain finally one Buddhahood, and one Buddhahood is a state of suchness. the non-dualistic, based on non-dualistic understanding. And we have, even so, Kumarajiva does not develop this idea here, but we find a very clear influence of the Lotus Sutra in this very treatise also, in which actually the Kumarajiva is addressing the disciples. It is clear that those who listen to his explanations are disciples, not the bodhisattvas. So our explanation of the idis is based on the 5 questions and 5 answers. The first question is that why comes among the explanation of the 6 abhinyas, the 6 supernatural knowledges or powers, why the power of psychic transformations or of the idis or ridis comes first. So the Kumarajiva answers that actually the meditator, he can choose any of these 6 abhinyas, 6 kinds of shentung, according to his liking, but the scriptures usually start with the description of the idis of the first one, for the very simple reason that a disciple who has attained the arahathood, he can contemplate the state of the beings who have not attained the arahathood and give rise to the great compassion, seeing their ignorance. So when you read the Bodhisattva Bhumi of the Yogacara Bhumi Shastra, this is also one of the main reasons why the Shravaka turns to the Bodhisattva, because he gives rise to great compassion, contemplating the suffering of sentient beings who are caught in the samsara. So we have explained the Bodhisattva practice consists in understanding the suffering of samsara, but not going away from samsara. We have explained this based on the Asanga's Bodhisattva Bhumi. The aim of Bodhisattva practice is to, in his compassion, great compassion, Bodhisattva stays in samsara. By his great wisdom, he learns to stay in samsara without suffering. So he does not need to turn away from samsara, because he cultivates the mother of the Buddhas, the transcendental wisdom. And we see the Kumarajiva deals especially with the arupa jhanas, the formless dhyanas, and here with the supernatural powers from the point of view of the transcendental wisdom. Transcendental wisdom is what is meant by great wisdom, and it is a base for the great compassion, or the great compassion is a base for great wisdom, which is a transcendental wisdom. The wisdom that finally we have explained while explaining the Four Noble Truths. Four Noble Truths is only the skillful means to lead the yogis to one truth. Finally, there is only one reality. There are no 2, 3, 4 different realities and innumerable different realities. Only one reality is there, and this is based on the non-dualistic understanding of the practice. So, because The Arahat has a great wisdom. He has also, he is free from ignorance, at least according to the Shravaka scriptures. So he has a great wisdom. He stays in the state of Samadhi, so his mind is always clear. So when he contemplates the ignorance of sentient beings, he can easily give rise to compassion, great compassion. Great compassion is a compassion which does not allow the yogi to leave, to turn away from suffering. This is a great compassion. And this great compassion leads to the non-dualistic realization when it is supported by the great wisdom, the transcendental wisdom. Now we have the second question. The disciple is asking, the body of divine beings is shining, and it has all these qualities of prashrabdhi, all these qualities of Ching An, all these qualities of clarity, relaxation, pliancy, lightness, smoothness, as we have explained. Because of that, it is very easy for them to fly, and it is very easy for them to transform. Similarly, for the Nagas and so on, but we humans, in the body, the gods are called the Devas because they are shining. But we are not shining, and we still, in a way, privileged beings, and we are not shining because the earth element is prevalent in our body. And earth element, or as students of Abhidhamma know, is characterized by tada. That means we are, our body is gross, our body is not subtle. So even if we are masters of the yoga, compared to the gods, we are still very, very gross and very stiff. So our body is stiffness compared to the body of the divine beings. But we can transfer this stiffness into non-stiffness by mental training. And he gives example of those who are in the state of dhyana. Their eyes are shining like gods because they are, so to say, their mind is adjusting to the conditioning of the gods. To be in the state of dhyana, we are mentally adjusted to the conditioning of the gods. And through this conditioning, this is the meaning of the vikurbana, we can change the experience of our body. When one is in jhana, one may have, especially if one has a distorted body like myself, one can experience pain, but this pain will not, so to say, be so troublesome as when one is in sitting without one-pointed concentration. One-pointed concentration makes the pain in the background. This is the advantage of shamatha. If one has mastered this one-pointedness of mind to the extent of supernatural powers, then one can even transform completely the sensations in the body. This is a fact. So this Kumarajiva is explaining that just like the earth can be moved by power of water and so on, the wind can move practically all the matter. So we can learn step by step by changing the experience of our body, by making it light, pliable. So this is also part, we have not studied that, but it is very important part of the practice of meditation on the 4 elements. We have before explained that the 4 elements, they have 3 aspects. They have the conventional aspect, earth. Conventional earth is the earth that we see outside. Then we have the mental earth that we see by practicing the practice of the kasinas, of the kritsna ayatanas, of the totality. Then we can have transformed the earth into mental image. And if we are masters of the idis, then we can spread it on the water and walk on the water. Why not? Of course, it needs a very great mastery. And we have explained according to the Upaklesa Sutta of the Majjhima Nikaya, the Buddha under the Bodhi tree has first purified his jhanas, and then by means of the supernatural powers he has attained the complete penetration of the dependent origination. This complete penetration of the dependent origination is the content of Buddha's realization. So even the Arahats or Pratyeka Buddhas, they don't have such a complete penetration of the dependent origination. And this is based on supernatural powers, namely the supernatural power of the divine eye and of the seeing of previous lives, which comes at the end. We will deal with it in the next lessons. They are part of the Tevija, of the 3 sciences one has to master to have a powerful realization. So this is on the base of this Adhitthana and Vikubana Idhi. They are the content of the psychic transformation, and actually Kumarajiva is only speaking about these 2 idhis among the 10, Vikubana and Adhitthana. By practicing the determination and by practicing the psychic transformation of the form, one can achieve all of these different idhis. And these are the 2 idhis which are explained by Kumarajiva in this scripture. So just as we can learn to swim, when we don't know to swim, we will sink into the water. When we know how to swim, we can float on the water. This is example Kumarajiva is using. Why not? When we want to fly, we can fly. It is based on the same principle. Only this transformation of the feeling of the body will take, of course, much more time to learn than learning to swim. The disciple agrees, and he comes with a third question, but how does one learn this skill of psychic transformation of the form by determination and by mastery of the manomaya kaya, of the mental body? The experience of jhana is actually experience of the mental body, not in our level of achievement where we will still be bothered by physicality, but on the mastery of jhanas. So the bodhisattva scriptures based on the Yogacara Bhumi Shastra, they emphasize especially the so-called 8 samskaras, ashta samskara, which are to be mastered in order to get the one-pointedness of the mind. One-pointedness of the mind is the aim of the shamatha practice. The dhyanas, mastery of all dhyanas becomes automatic when we have mastered the one-pointedness of the mind. And to master the one-pointedness of the mind, Asanga explained the 8, I think I have mentioned them before, the 8 samskaras. And in our explanation of the Idipadas, we had the Padana Sankhara. So these Padana Sankharas, they are actually the 8 samskaras the Asanga is explaining, but in a more like a precise way. In order to succeed in one-pointedness, we need faith, shraddha, we need enthusiasm, chanda, we need vyayama. They are also the idipadas, which means effort, continuous effort. Then we will get prashrabdhi, we will get lightness, relaxation, pliancy. When we have these, we will get naturally the ability for mindfulness. When we have mindfulness, we will have awareness. When we have awareness, we can not allow any tendency in mind to sinking or to floating. This tendency to sinking will be countered by will. They are also the sankharas, and the tendency to audatyam, to agitation of mind, will be countered by upeksha. So they are by equanimity. They are the 8 sankharas that we need to cultivate, explaining the countries, the practice of the idipadas in a more precise way, connected with the 9 chitta sthitis, the 9 stages of the mind on the way to mastery of samadhi. So they have to be mastered in order to gain access to the supernatural powers. And supernatural powers, as we have explained, they are based on the capability of maintaining the one-pointedness of the mind. Asanga explains samadhi as the habit of one-pointedness of the mind. So this is a very interesting approach, connected with this emphasis of the prabhavata of bodhisattva, of the power of the powers that bodhisattva has to cultivate. These powers of bodhisattvas, they are based on the deep practice of shamatha. Bodhisattva has to practice deep practice of shamatha. Asanga explains that the joy of the Shravakas is nirvana, the joy of the bodhisattvas is shamatha, samadhi. That is a joy of the bodhisattvas. So it shows very clearly how these supernatural powers are highly valued in the practice of the bodhisattvas. This is especially emphasized, of course, in the tantric practice. So when we have mastered this one-pointedness of the mind, then by virtue of this, what we have explained as the adhithana ide and vikubana ide, the ability for resolution, powerful resolution and powerful transformation, we can then merge the mind, our mental part of existence and our physical part of existence into one, like by heating the iron, making it red iron, the iron which is stiff starts to flow. Similarly, by mental powers, we can make the mind adopt the physicality to our what we want, to our will, to our resolution, and then change the nature of the four elements. It is very important to understand the real four elements. They are the lakhana. The real earth is the lakhana patavi, is a earth based on the characteristics: hardness, softness, smoothness, roughness, lightness, heaviness. These are the 6 characteristics of the earth. Now, if you have a powerful one-pointedness of the mind, and you can learn this practice, it is, I have explained in the beginning, it is mentioned it was a very important practice in Theravada, but also in Sarvastivada, the Chatudhatu Vavatana, or Dhatu Prabheda. By paying attention to the lightness, you can make, if you have powerful mind, you can make the experience of your body change from heaviness to lightness. And Kumarajiva is giving skillful means how to do it. You visualize your body as an inside of a lotus root, or inside of a bamboo, or inside of the banana tree. And you make a powerful mental image based on the one-pointedness of the mind, and then you apply it to your kalapas, to the atoms of your body, and then the structure of your body will change. Why? This is very important principle, base for our understanding of the dependent origination. We know hardness because our hand is soft, If we touch the soft object, we experience it as a soft because our hand is harder. Similarly, we experience a heavy object as heavy because our hand in which we take it is lighter. But when we experience an object as light, it means that our hand with which we feel it is heavier than the object we have in hand. So we know hardness on the base of softness, we know roughness on the base of smoothness, we know heaviness on the base of lightness, and each element has heavy side and the light side. The heavy side of earth is stiffness, the light side is smoothness. Heavy side of water is cohesion, the light side is flowing. The heavy side of fire is coolness, and the light side is heat. And the heavy side of wind is supporting, the light side of wind is vibration or moving or pushing. So we feel the heavy side because of the organ with which we feel it has the light side, and the vice versa. On the same principle, then, you can learn by gradual process on the base of one-pointedness, you can learn to transform your experience of the object by paying attention, by your resolution. You attain actually the vikubana, the transformation. So in this way you can transform. If you want to learn flying in the sky, then you use this light side of the mind. The Buddha explains in Anguttara Nikaya, I don't know anything that is so lahu parivartam, so easily transformed as a mind. So you can use this lahu parivarta nature of the mind, which is easily transformable, to transform the other things. And we come to the important passage, the bodhisattva learns these powers of transformation in order to convert beings. And convert them, he has to transform his body to convert the beings according to their way of existence. He can only make himself understood by transforming his existence in which to the state that the beings find themselves in, that state of existence. That he can do only by the power of manomaya idhi. And he does it in order to practice the anusasana patiharya and desana patiharya, to practice the power of teaching and converting the beings into the Dharma by all kinds of skillful means. So actually, according to Kumarajiva, the main point in the practice of these supernatural powers of transformation is to deepen one's own understanding of the Dharma, that is to benefit oneself, and to convert innumerable beings by not distinguishing between oneself and the others. This is precisely as explained in the Bodhisattva Bhumi and so on, in all scriptures explaining the path of Bodhisattva, not distinguishing between the what is beneficial for oneself and what is parahit, what is beneficial for the other. So by practicing this approach, one can then come closer and closer to the mastery of the Anusasana and Desana Patiharya, which are, when completely mastered, which are the privilege of the perfectly enlightened Buddha himself. No one can match this ability, but it is the state of a perfect Buddhahood. And this perfect Buddhahood, it is clearly also hinted at by Kumarajiva, who is the translator of the Lotus Sutra. This is the real nature of the world. The real nature of the world cannot be different from the real nature of the perfect Buddha himself. Because the reality which is true and which is one reality is the reality as the realized person sees it, not as we ignorant beings see it. Because we ignorant beings, we are deprived of vijja. Being deprived of vijja is a state of avijja. Being deprived of science is the non-science or ignorance. To be a being means to be in the state of ignorance. That means to be in the state when the vijja has not ripened. When the vijja has ripened, the reality becomes one. So this is a very important principle, repeated many, many times, especially in the Transcendental Wisdom Sutras. The whole practice of the Bodhisattva is to perfect the vijja, to perfect the science, so that he attains the sarva akara sarvagyata. He attains the omniscience in all aspects. Omniscience in all aspects is the true nature of the perfectly enlightened mind. And it is the full realization of the non-dualistic approach to practice. So we see all these manifestations of different bodies in the different states of existence. This is a very important part of the Vikubana Ide, of the psychic transformations, and the main emphasis of the explanation of the Ides here in Kumarajiva's work is this Vikubana Ide, to be able to transform by psychic powers into any form to teach the beings in any type of existence. And this is also what must have been the aim of the Kumarajiva's practice himself. Now, question number 4, a very important question. Is it not the case that all these things created by psychic transformations are illusionary? We have mentioned in the Theravada tradition, you have Vijja Maya Idhi, ability to transform your perception, like a magician makes makes illusionary elephants, illusionary rabbits, taking them out of his head and so on. The great yogi can do the same way. So isn't all this just illusion? Now, Kumarajiva, the translator of the Transcendental Wisdom Sutras, comes with a very pertinent answer. Actually, all that we see, all phenomena are elusive and deceptive, like illusion or a product of a magic. There is no exception to this. Why? Because all that we experience is actually the based on our mind and on the transformations of the mind. Because as Dhammapada says, all the dharmas, all the phenomena are contained in mind. And the mind, as Buddha teaches in the suttas, even in the suttas of the Savakas, the mind is a great magician. This great magician can create any type of existence. So this is the very essence of Buddha's teachings. The creation, we don't need anything which comes outside of the mind. The creation itself is the creation of the mind. Nowadays, many scientists tend to come to very similar conclusions, because the division between the mind and the materiality is being blurred. Still, it does not change at all our approach to life. So just like a powerful man can change, can make rain come. Many stories like this in Chinese, even in the Greek literature. Powerful man can make snow fall in summer and so on, can make a wind blow on the special occasions when he wishes. So, same principle that we have explained on the base of the mastery of the practice of the four elements, you can, by concentration, you can emphasize. It is very important to understand our concentration is similar to a microscope. What you put on the microscope, a small thing becomes large. Similarly, the mind, and this you learn by practicing the kasinas, the krishna ayatanas. Mind has a capability to extend any mental image into infinity and again draw it into the size of a tip of the needle. This is ability of the mind. Anyone can learn it. who learns the kasinas and who learns the deep concentration. This is not so difficult. So by the same principle, by putting forward one quality, we can conceal the other quality to the extent that it does not appear. So this is part of the mastery of the psychic powers. And it is based on the theory of the three kinds of earth, three kinds of water, three kinds of fire, three kinds of wind, conventional mental image, and the real is the lakhana, the characteristics. This is the ultimate earth, ultimate water, ultimate fire. And this is actually the so-called derived materiality, bhautika materiality, is completely based only on these basic inputs. According to the Yogacara Abhidharma, actually the colors and so on, they are nothing but the transformation of the four elements. Only the four elements, they are the kind of real Paratantra. Because the colors, we take it for granted, but it is even proven by science that it is by no means given that the color that we see is the color that other beings see. This is one of the main arguments Vasubandhu puts in Vimshika, that we only see, our seeing of river, our seeing of the things in the world is completely subjective. Seeing of our colors, seeing of rivers, seeing of forms is completely subjective, because other beings see the same colors, but what we see, but they see them completely differently. But these qualities of hardness and softness, even so different beings see them in different way. What we see as hardness may be softness for a woodworm and so on. Woodworm also has his own ideas of softness and hardness. And the crocodile, what we see as stiff, the crocodile may feel as very soft because his teeth are very, very sharp and hard. Who is right? Yet this quality of hardness and softness will be always there when the earth is experienced. And this is a real Paratantra. But the quality of color and so on, they may be experienced in a completely different way by completely different beings. That's why that actually only the four elements, they are the real content of the so-called materiality of rupa, or rather of that which has form, as opposed to the formless. So we come to the last question: how to explain the psychic transformations of objects from something into nothing in its substance and in its details. This is a very, very interesting part. We could expatiate on it, but we will not do it because we have surpassed our time anyway, and this is not exactly our topic. The answer is very interesting. There is a saying that atoms of matter derived from the four elements in space can be transformed into the shape of a human body through psychic powers. Those who have studied little bit the Tibetan Buddhism know about the Kala Chakra practice, where the atoms of the space elements are, so to say, base of the transformation and creation of the universe, which is, so to say, reproduced by the practice of the Kala Chakra. I don't know if we cannot know if Kumarajiva was familiar, or if this practice is something similar to that existed in his period. But anyway, this is very interesting. As for example, a person when he dies is reborn in accordance with the circumstances of his meritorious and non-meritorious deeds, either in heaven or in hell. The combination of atoms to produce a corporeal transformation is also like that. So this comes to the science of alchemy. Kumarajiva was teaching in China in the period where especially the alchemy was was a period of amalgamation of Taoism with Buddhism, which has influenced very much the development of Chinese Buddhism. That was the study of the mystery of the Xuan. So this influenced very much Chinese Buddhism, to the extent that Chinese Buddhism adopted many of the elements of the Taoism, and the inseparable part of Taoism is precisely this mental alchemy, and this may be pointing out to this combination to produce a corporal transformation is also like that. So this may be referring also to the Taoistic practices of transforming the matter, which the European alchemists also tried precisely very hard, but especially in later periods. So we can, so to say, on the base of mind, we can transform everything. When the mind is powerful, it can transform the world. And mind becomes powerful by this advanced practice of the dhyanas. And this advanced practice of the dhyanas leads to what the Mahayana scriptures explain. Actually, the practice of the bodhisattva is to transform everything by mind. The pure land, which is also emphasized by Kumarajiva, transformation of the mind, transformation into pure land. This is very important part of the Mahayana practice, which is indirectly mentioned here. We will come to it in the explanation of the other abhinyas. So you can transform completely your existence through the mind, and also you can transform the existence of yourself and your others through the mind, because the mind is the only real contain of all the dharmas. And we will come to the divine year now in the next lecture, and we will see how wonderfully again the Kumarajiva explains this practice of the abhinyas with the bodhisattva practice of the he connects the divine ear with the four sharanas, the four refugees of the bodhisattva. It is very interesting, and we will explain it in our next lecture. So let us finish today here. We have surpassed our time, and the essential, I hope, we have explained. And now let us see if there are any questions. If not, we will do the Punya Parinama Huishyang and finish for today. Any questions, Supriya?
You can unmute yourself. If anyone has a question, you can unmute yourself and ask, please.
Chetso, thank you.
Yes.
So,
Thank you, Bhante.
Any question?
Well, I was left with some. Thank you so much, Bhante, for the teaching. I was left with some question about your reference to the Kalachakra Tantra in relation to space particles. I was hoping you could unfurl that a little bit more.
Well, I am not a student of Kalachakra. I only know from reading. I have never practiced Kalachakra. I only know from my reading, and that's all information that I have. And it is very fascinating part of the Tibetan Buddhism. And I know that it is based on these so-called atoms of the space. Maybe.
And I was wondering, is there any other reference? Do you find any other reference to space particles in any of Kumarajiva's work? Any earlier work?
I have not.
I see.
I have not found it. I have not found it in Asanga. I am more studying the Asanga Maitreya literature. I have not found a reference to it in any of these works of Asanga and Maitreya.
Well, because it seems to be a contradiction in terms to speak of a particle of space. If space is an unobstructable phenomenon, I just wonder how it would be conceived a particle of space.
Well, we have to go to the Kalachakra literature itself, I think.
Yes. Thank you so much, Bhante.
There are many commentaries to Kalachakra in the Tibetan literature.
Yes, definitely.
So
thank you.
You may be able to find something there. I have no clue at all.
It's very interesting. Thank you so much, Bhante. Thank you.
Okay. So shall we do the transference of merit?
Yes, okay. Unless anyone else has a question. No one has a question.
So let us do in Pali. Eta vata chamehi sampatam punya sampadam sabbe deva anumodantu sabha sampati siddhya. Eta vata chamehi sampatam punya sampadam sabbe bhuta anumodantu sabha sampati siddhya. Eta vata chamehi sampatam punya sampadam sabbe satta anumodantu sabha sampati siddhya. Aka satta chabumatha deva naga mahidika punyantang anumoditva chiramrakantu lokasasana. Aka satta chabumatha deva naga mahidika punyantang anumoditva chiramrakantu desana. Aka satta chabumatha deva naga mahidika punyantang anumoditva chiramrakantu tumampana. Devo vasatu kalene sasa sampati hotucha pito bhavatu lokocha raja bhavatu dhammiko. Sadhu. Thank you, and